I'd like to call the Finance, Ways and Means Appropriations Subcommittee to order for March 21st, 2002. We have enough to get started, but we're going to, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Representatives Campbell, Faison, Garrett, Hazelwood, Hicksell Hawkins, Miller, Sexton Granger, Shaw, Sparks, Zachary, Chairman Williams.
Thank you. Clerk, do the members have any personal orders or announcements to make? Seeing none, to the members, the focus of today's hearing will be to provide an update on the progress and implementation of the Memphis Regional Megasite, otherwise known as Blue Oval City. An informational document has been sent to your offices earlier in the week, but that is also will be helpful for you in today's discussion. It's also on the dashboard, as all the documents are on the dashboard. We do have a full docket today. We've invited our guests to come today, and I've asked each of them to communicate about an update for their applicable department for about 15 minutes. And then at the end of our discussion, 15 minutes each maximum. You can do it in 5, and everybody up here will love you since we've been in budget hearings all day. But with the opportunity to ask some questions at the end. And so first up, today we have, I think, Brooksy. I saw her in the, Commissioner Rolfe, you were here. You and your staff are welcome to come up, introduce yourself. It's a hearing. We're going to go out of session to hear from them today, without objection, obviously. But we're going to hear from them today. Commissioner Rolfe, thank you for coming, and your staff, as I see them nodding and smiling. So happy Monday.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
As represented, I'm Bobby Rolfe, and I work with a great team at ECD. Also in the audience with me is our Rural Development and Community Development Commissioner, Brooksy Carlton, our General Counsel, Sharon Cobb, and I think that's it. Actually, Braden Stower from our General Legislative Affairs. And I'll be very brief, Mr. Chairman, with your permission. I am attempting to catch a 5 o'clock flight to the West Coast for a major recruiting project, and so I will be very succinct. At the same time, I know there will be Q&A, and our team will be here to answer those questions. So with your permission, I will begin, sir. So first of all, what I'd like to just say is, as far as 30,000 feet, our job at ECD was to recruit the companies. And then our job, we negotiated the MOU, and then we handed it over to the other departments in state government. And what I can tell you, and they can speak for themselves, but General Services, Clay Bright, Tdot, Labor and Workforce Development, the Board of Regents, we are so far ahead of where Ford is when it comes to just having a plan. So I can just speak at 30,000 feet to say all so good, and we are in many cases waiting on Ford. As far as what we're doing at ECD, we're responsible for the capital grant. So that's a $500 million capital grant that is the incentive bucket of gold to help Ford offset a close to $6 billion capital expenditure in creating the 5,900 jobs at the mega site. I can also tell you that the facility lease has been signed. So Ford Motor Company now has the right to access 3,500 acres. So they have basically a master lease that gives them the right to stand up whatever they would like to. So it's going to be the OEM, it's going to be the battery plant with the joint venture. And then if they decide to bring other affiliates and or other suppliers to that campus, they have that right. And so that lease has been fully executed thanks to General Counsel Sharon Cobb and her team. And as I said, Ford now has the right to begin construction. And they had that right effective on March 15th. As far as the pilot, that has also been fully executed, and Ford is now bound by the terms of that pilot program. And just by way of a little bit of history there, Ford Motor Company will be responsible for ultimately making about $269 million of payments over the next 30 years from when they actually, that technically it starts, I believe, in 2 years. But that's all to say those dollars will come to Clay Bright and the Megasite Authority, and then they will make the decision, that board, of where those dollars go locally to offset costs that these cities and counties in and around the Megasite, what they'll be incurring As far as the capital grant and the accountability agreement, those documents have been negotiated. We expect to go before the State Building Commission for approval at the May meeting. And what I can tell you about, so it's two separate grants because basically it's the OEM, and the OEM is going to be responsible for 3,260 jobs, and they will take down $285 million of the $500 million. So that'll go to Ford. And then the balance of that, the $2,500 jobs, $215 million will go to the joint venture between Ford and SK Innovations. That's their battery JV partner. And also with that capital grant comes this accountability agreement. It has all of the legal protections that the state should and would want. And so we are covered from that perspective. And ladies and gentlemen, that's my very brief report. We're continuing to recruit, not only on the mega site, but obviously interested parties that are going to be suppliers off the mega site. So that's been a real positive. There is a separate 500 acres on the mega site. We've been recruiting a company now months before Ford Motor Company showed up. And so I can tell you we're making very good progress on that front as well.
Thank you, Commissioner, for coming. First of all, I know you are extremely busy, and we wish you the best of luck in your travels out west. And hopefully you'll find some great success like you have here on this project as well. But I know you've got some place to go, and we don't want to prevent you from being there. But I look forward. I'm sure Ms. Carlton will be happy to answer any questions.
Because she has a separate bucket of gold to help with the communities. I think it's $5 million, which
Yes.
she'll give you a full report on when you guys go to the Q&A.
Okay.
And just two other thoughts. We are now back recruiting internationally. So last week we were in Belgium, the week before in Germany, and then 4 weeks ago over in Italy. And so the great news is all of that pent up demand for all those companies internationally, that FDI spigot's turning back on. So hopefully good things to announce down the road here.
Excellent. Thank you for coming today. I really appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you.
Next up on our list today, we have Tdot, Tennessee Department of Transportation. Interim Commissioner Galbatto, you're welcome to come up with your staff and give us an update on the infrastructure improvements as relates to your department. And once again, we are out of session, so if you please introduce yourself and your counterparts there, the three amigos. You guys can go ahead and introduce yourselves as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, for having us here today. I am Joe Galbatto, Interim Commissioner and Chief Financial Officer of Tdot. To my right is Paul Deggs, our Deputy Commissioner and Chief Engineer. And to his right is our Blue Oval City Program Manager, Steve Sellers. So I'm going to give you all a quick and much less than 15 minutes, a quick overview of what we are responsible for, what we've done, and where we are at today. And then again, I've got Paul and Steve in case some of the questions get more into the engineering or if you want to talk about some of the project work itself. So good, it's on the screen. So you can see there's really two things that Tdot's responsible for, the red section and the blue section. The red section is our phase one. So that entails a new I-40 interchange at mile marker 39, expanding State Road 194 North, going to the Blue Oval Connector Road, and then constructing the connector road to State Road 222. That's phase one, and that's originally been scheduled to open to traffic by January of 2025. So phase two, because you have to have state routes going somewhere, this will take State Road 194 North to State Road 1, and it'll take it south to State Road 59. That phase is not estimated to be completed until July of 26. Now, you all did appropriate $200 million to Tdot to do this. At this point, we've spent about $12 million, mostly on the preliminary engineering. So as of today, we have two basic entities doing a lot of work, our main consultant, HDR, and Tdot. HDR right now is performing surveys, processing data, accumulating data, doing the line and grade plans, as well as the geotechnical drilling. On the Tdot side, we've been very, very busy. Doing the interchange access request form for FHWA to do the new interchange at 39, performing the environmental work, ecology, archaeology, air quality, as well as working to resolve the mitigation credit shortfalls, which we think we've done. Lastly, we're working on the NEPA document, as well as working on right-of-way activities to purchase the land. At this point, we believe both Tdot and Ford have got the adequate number of mitigation credits to move things forward. So that's good. So with good news, there's always some, maybe not bad news, but questionable news. So we've encountered some issues. We've asked, to what Commissioner Rolfe said, we are far ahead of Ford. We've asked them for a lot of information, made preliminary plans and things that have turned out that we have to make some changes. So they've given us a new site plan. We were working off an old site plan. That's going to cause us to change the road alignment where it's placed. Need to look at the right-of-way a little bit differently now, as well as necessitate the section of the connector road going through the mega site. Instead of being a 4-lane divided, it will be a 5-lane with a turn lane. So that's causes some issues. Also, they've changed their traffic pattern. We've been asking for this for a while because early on, Paul and his engineers have seen this doesn't look like it's the right configuration, and now we've been confirmed that. So that's going to cause us to reconfigure the interchange at exit 39, make different improvements to exit 42 to the east, and then other improvements on State Road 222 to the north of the connector. Lastly, Ford has asked for full lighting on State Route 194 as well as on the connector roads. That's really not TDOT's responsibility. We will put them in, but it's the locals' responsibility to maintain thereafter, so we're working with them. So all that being said, as far as our delivery dates that I mentioned earlier, they're likely to slip. We'll have more information as we get further down the road with our studies, but at this point, we have concern on that front. And then we'll wait for your questions at the end.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. As the members have questions, I hope you're writing them down, as I am, because there's a lot to go over really fast. Any other further comment? Okay.
No, Chairman.
Thank you. Next up, we have the Department of General Services, Commissioner Branscombe. Thank you for coming. We'll say as she comes up to introduce herself, fantastic communicating with your department. Always willing to come here. Very thankful for you and your staff communicating with us about this. So I appreciate your patience as we tried to sort out today's meeting. But thank you very much. Commissioner, you are recognized.
PowerPoint here coming up. That will be placed, however, I believe. There we go. Wonderful. I will put it right here. All right. Thank you all. Good afternoon. Chairman Williams and members of the committee. I am Christy Branscombe, Commissioner of the Department of General Services. Take this opportunity to introduce a couple of my teammates. I have our new Director of Communications, Michelle Brinson, in the office. Put your hand up, Michelle. Great. And then, of course, J.D. Cressman. Some of you know, I believe, he is Assistant General Counsel and also our Legislative Liaison and does a great job for us. Our department is responsible for the water and wastewater infrastructure for Ford to be able to build Blue Oval City. So I'm going to give you a brief update on where we are with those capital projects, and then also provide you a little bit of information about the electric and gas as well. As you've heard, things are going well. We've done very well on the state side. We work together very well. Our departments do. We have coordinated task force meetings every other week. We have weekly meetings with Walbridge and Ford, and the state's doing, as I said, very well on our deliverables. Our particular department has 2 State Building Commission approved capital projects. Let's talk about the first one. The first SBC approved capital project includes the 36.5 miles of pipeline that will go from the northwest corner of the mega site where our wastewater treatment plant is all the way to the Mississippi River. It also includes a pump station that's going to be built in Covington on property that's owned by the state of Tennessee. It's basically everything related to getting the pipe in the ground and transferring that wastewater to the river, and including the pump station. The capacity of our wastewater treatment plant, when it is completed, will be 5.1 million gallons per day. The notice to proceed was submitted by the state to Garney Companies on February 28, 2020, so just not too long ago. Our completion is estimated to be fall of 2023. Garney Companies was the successful proposer on this particular project, and we think it's going to be about an 18-month schedule. The total project for this scope of work is $100.36 million. This is a diagram of the actual pipeline. It shows it running from that northwest corner to the force main outfall that's going to be located at the swiftest part of the Tennessee River, or excuse me, the Mississippi River. And the red box there indicates where we are starting. Garney has actually mobilized to the site at this point, and this area is open and ready to receive pipe. And we're going to be starting with the pipe that we had actually bought as a state several years ago. We have about 15 miles of pipe, 18-inch pipe, and it has been maintained in excellent condition, and we will be starting using that right here in this location, as I said. Okay, the second state building commission approved project includes the balance of the infrastructure, and this is the water and wastewater treatment plants, the wastewater overflow lagoon, 7 water wells, and the north water tower. You may recall the south water tower had already been completed. Brassfield and Gorey Construction Company was awarded the contract for the work. The original design and designer estimate was based on an outflow of 3.5 million gallons a day, and as you heard me say earlier, we're at 5.1 million gallons a day. And what has happened is when Ford really began to study their needs for wastewater, that they realized that they needed more than the 3.5 that we had originally designed for. So we have adjusted our designs. It took them a little while to figure that out. Frankly, we thought we would know that information by August. We just found out in December. But we are working on redesign fast and furious, but there was about a 4-month period where we were not able to move. So as you've heard before, we've been ahead of Ford and waiting on them to get their information to us. But we feel confident now. They've checked with all of their vendors and suppliers and those that will be locating at Blue Oval City, and also checking with SK Innovation, their battery manufacturer partner, and they feel good with where we are at this point in time. But as I said, these changes impacted the schedule a little bit. Ford, of course, is very well aware of that since they understand they did not provide the information in the timeline that we had projected. This is a 24-month schedule. We expect to give a notice to proceed in the spring of 2024, which is probably next month, realistically. We would like to think that we could get it done maybe by the spring of 24, but more likely it's going to be the fall of 24 when this gets delivered. Brassfield Gorey has promised to provide us a GMP very soon, along with the project schedule, so we'll have more information about that, hopefully within the next 30 days. The total project budget for this scope of work is $124,230,000, and we have every reason to believe that we're well within our project budget. So I'll talk briefly about electric and gas. First, TVA is providing the power to the entire megasite property. They're building a substation on approximately 45 acres of property, and this area is located just to the east of the Tennessee State Route 222, and I'll show that to you here in just a moment. There are 2 local electric providers there, Southwest Electric and Chickasaw Electric, and they really divide the site almost in half. Each of them provide about half of the site. They will be providing power throughout it, and they are working with their partner TVA, and TVA has reported that they believe they will have their electric available to Ford by 2024. That would be the fall of 2024. So we'll give you an update on gas. The local company is A&R Pipeline. It's a subsidiary of TC Energy Corporation to provide natural gas to the megasite. The state will provide approximately 2 acres for the mainline service to the site, and Ford is working directly with TC and A&R, just as Ford is working directly with the electric company and TVA for these services. So in both of these cases, the state is providing access, but no additional funding, of course. That is for Ford to take care of. And then this really is a site map that shows all the infrastructure features that I just mentioned. You can see in blue, that is Blue Oval City, everything that is hatched out in blue. The state-owned property is in red, and you can see where we have most of our infrastructure in those areas. On the east side of 222 is, of course, available for a future tenant, so that is still state-owned property. But you can look and see where all these various infrastructure items are located on this map. You'll also notice the TCAT, which many people ask about, is at the bottom there on the southeast corner of the megasite property. You'll also see a kind of a purplish pink running horizontally across the southern portion of the megasite. That is a mitigation easement that is agreed to between the state and Ford. And it is under the jurisdiction of the West Tennessee River Basin. It is a stream that has been enhanced so that we could gain some mitigation credits. It'll be maintained for a minimum of at least 5 years, but again, by West Tennessee River Basin Authority. And finally, just wanted to review the mega site funding summary. This slide shows that. You'll see we had land and environmental category, a budget of $74,336,300. Of course, we've spent almost all of that money. We've done most of our environmental, and we have worked on, of course, acquiring all of that land. This number has been, it's an older part of our budget. The state has expended $74,164,800. The Force Main Pipeline and Pump Station, which again is that first approved project I mentioned, is budgeted at $100,357,600. And to date, the state has expended $3,600,100. That's basically related to design services. Now, as I mentioned, Garney's on site, so this will change dramatically here fairly soon. The next scope of work is that scope that Brassfield Gorey was awarded. It is the treatment plants, the wells, the site water main, North Water Tower, and the lagoon overflow. And it is budgeted at $124,234,700, and none of that has been spent at this point in time. And then finally, we have a budget for the design and then the redesign that was related to the change between 3.5 to 5.1 million gallons a day in wastewater treatment. And that category is budgeted $29,039,500. And to date, we have expended $13,384,700. So there was, if you recall, $138 million that was appropriated during October 2021 special legislature session. There had already been close to $190 million appropriated by the legislature before then towards this project. So that gets you to a total project budget of $327,968,100. And that is the end. Thank you very much. I'll be available for future questions.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you very much. Lots of numbers, folks. Last testimony today be from CEO of the Mega Site Authority, Clay Bright, who used to wear a different hat. So welcome back. So if you will, just introduce yourself and give us an update. And then once he's complete, we'll come back up and grab a seat for questions.
All right, so Clay Bright with the Mega Site. So everybody else has said everything I needed to say, so I don't have much to say. But I do have a couple of things I want to add in. Hopefully, I'm not going to be redundant for you. So as you know, Mega Site's 4,100 acres. As Commissioner Branscombe says, Ford's got about 3,200 acres of that. Most of that is in Haywood County. A little bit down in Fayette County. It's right there at mile marker 42 with State Road 222, basically splitting the site. And already talked about the TCAT itself. So I will say this on the Mega Site Authority Board, what we have, we have our full board that's been appointed, and that consists of the governor, Commissioner Rolfe, Commissioner Branscombe, Commissioner Ely. Charlie Tuggle is our chairman of the board. Evelyn Robertson, Mayor Hoffman, Michael Banks, Jim Duke, Carolyn Hardy, and Chris Richards. That is the team for the Mega Site Authority Board. And then also as far as the team members that are really assisting me on the team, besides everybody else that's already spoken with the different agencies, and I have a few more agencies to describe, but primarily Gretchen Smith and Partners is helping us on the technical side of it, and Bradley is our legal counsel. So that's our team on the Mega Site. You've already seen the deliverables and the interchange by Tdot, and Commissioner Branscombe's already talked about the infrastructure for the water and the wastewater. You saw the location for the TCAT itself. It's about around 100,000 square feet. They're exposed to Montgomery Martin is their contractor on that, and I believe they're trying to break ground on that project sometime this summer. So it's ready for operation sometime end of 23, first of 24 is the schedule on the TCAT itself. And also I will tell you this as it relates to everybody on the technical side. TBR is working on the curriculum right now, has run all that through with Ford. They're still trying to get some input from SK on where they stand, but they want to have that curriculum approved in June so they can start distributing that curriculum in all the different TCATs in West Tennessee and the different high schools and whatnot to start that process. So we've got people that are ready in 25 when they start making the Ford Lightning. So we're in phase one as far as Ford specifically is concerned, and that consists of a assembly plant, a paint shop, the battery, the supplier park, CSX, and storage. Is this a click? Is this a? I'll go to the map real quick. So on the left leg that's headed west, that's where CSX is coming in. They're going to have two legs for that. One is bringing raw materials in. The next one will be taking lightnings out, and that'll be a storage area. The other white buildings that are along the north side, that is the assembly plant itself. Starting on State Road 222 is where the stamping plant goes, and it moves through the assembly to where the storage yard is, where they'll load them up on the CSX rail cars. Down below there, there's a strip of different buildings you can barely see. One's red, a couple of them are blue. That is where the supplier park is being located. And then right below that, you'll see a large white building. That building, just to put it in perspective, is 3,200 feet long. It's 3.6 million square feet. So the order of magnitude about what's going on out here is large. If you stretch from one end of the site to the other, east and west, it's about 6 miles long and about the same way north and south. So it's a big site. That's phase one, and that's all north of the connector road that Tdot's putting in. Everything south will be phase two, which is another battery plant and another assembly plant. And we don't have any schedule for when they want to start that. But that's the site plan. Bobby already mentioned the pilot. It is Ford's goal to be zero carbon, so they're still working through that. We don't completely understand what they'll be doing there. And as far as Ford team, just to let you know, on the design side, they're using SSOE, who we're also using, and they've also got a company called Ghaffari. So that's their design team, and Walbridge, I think it's already been mentioned, is the contractor. So that's the team, the main team for Ford. So the schedule, as you know, all you approved the special session last fall. So a lot has really happened, and I'll echo what Commissioner Branscombe said. Well, what everybody else has said, we have been very proactive on the offense through this whole process. So the lease has been executed. That was Friday, a couple of days ago. They may have started site work. I passed the site last week. They had a lot of their equipment out there. Phillips and Jordan out of Knoxville, that's their site contractor. And so they're supposed to start maybe today on moving earth work. Some of the structure will start this summer. And it's my understanding they'll start moving equipment in sometime in 24, manufacturing equipment. And their desire, their goal, and we won't be holding them back, is to be ready to make the Ford Lightning coming off the assembly plant in January of 25. I already talked about the TCAT schedule. Two other things that we're responsible for as the Mega Site Authority, and we'll be going through the CPO's office within the next year, is going through the process of getting a third-party operator on board to operate both the water and the wastewater treatment plant. And we also have a pre-treatment process we have to go through to give Ford that information. So that's really what is on our agenda to accomplish in the next couple of months. And the last part of what I'll say is just to give you an order of magnitude. I think Christy talked about the coordinating task force meeting that we have every 2 weeks. That's the coordinating task force right there. So on the technical side, you got general services, Tdot. Environmental has really been ahead and really led Ford very well. We have not had any holdups through the permitting process for the authority. I don't believe for Tdot, and also for Ford itself. So they were supposed to pick up their permits last week so they could start construction as far as Ford's concerned. But they have been a huge help and a huge lift right there. You've already heard from ECD. As far as commerce and insurance is concerned, all the approvals for the buildings that are being built out there by by Ford is going through the State Fire Marshal's office. And on the workforce side, the Labor and Workforce Development, TBR, Department of Education, Higher Education, and DHS is all working together with all the different groups that are in West Tennessee trying to coordinate that effort. And of all that we're doing as far as setting success for this project, that's something that's a big lift. But as far as changing West Tennessee, that's going to have more impact than anything else we do as far as raising the education in that part of the state. So at that point, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bright. If the commissioners would come back up, and if we need, and I'm assuming the members have questions. I haven't started a list, but if you come back up, I'd have a few questions. And then as we needed, we can bring some folks up. But while you're coming back up, I thought I would take a moment to recognize a longtime employee. I was talking to our chief engineer, Tdot, and our interim director about one of their staff members who passed away this morning, Angie Martin. She worked for I think the correct number is at least 6 Tdot commissioners in the last several decades. And so she will be missed. Our thoughts and prayers are with her family and our Tdot family in your loss. And so we extend our condolences to you and to your team. So as the members have questions, if you'll let Tanner know, I'm going to jump in real quick and ask a few questions, but just wanted to bring honor where honor's due as it relates to Ms. Martin. So thank you very much. Just a quick question. You ended, Mr. Bright, regarding environment conservation and permitting. On a project like this, are there any federal permits like clean air, water? Maybe that's you, Commissioner Branscombe, as it relates to, I know in the construction process, anytime you got a paint plant with pre-treat or battery plants, it seems to me like that there's some additional permitting. Is that my assumption is it's a state permit, but are there federal permits that we have to do as it relates to that process, and what's the progress on those?
So I can speak to a couple of those. First of all, yes, we do have the permit we needed from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for the outfall at the Mississippi River. That is located at the swiftest part of the river. They were very specific about where they wanted the outfall. We met with them several times. That permit's been in place for quite some time. In all of our TDEC permits, we have as well for the pipeline install. I think Clay mentioned previously the wastewater treatment plant and the process we need to go through to procure an operator for the wastewater treatment plant. We're procuring that now in anticipation of having that plant open at least a year, likely more from this period of time, because you do have to have EPA permits to be able to operate that. And you really have to be working with EPA and getting your systems down and getting them approved and getting them inspected and make sure they're functioning correctly before that permit will be issued. So that's why we're starting their procurement so soon.
Okay. And Chairman Williams, you also mentioned on the pre-treatment, that's also part of a second thing that's going on also. So that's going to take us about a year. That will be worked in conjunction with environmental and conservation through that whole process to be able to tell Ford specifically their battery plant paint shop what pre-treatment they have to do before we receive it in the water treatment plant.
And so those are the only two components, the battery plant and then the paint booth. Usually, I have no experience in large scale automotive.
I don't either.
Okay.
At this
Yeah.
time, at this point in time, though, I think that is correct. I mean, if there are future suppliers who locate there, then they may have some requirements, but we're not aware of those at this point.
Right. One of the questions that I get too is about 3,600 acre site, 4,100 acres. There's a lot of ways in and out as it relates to security. It's probably an impossibility to do that. I guess up until the ground lease, my expectation it was maybe the state's responsibility. Talk to me about how credentialing works, access to the site, who's responsible for access at many different points, whether you're a surveyor shooting a topographical survey or whether you're somebody that's putting in sewer line. I mean, how do we control access to such a large facility?
So Chairman Williams, when they signed that lease, it's a 30-year lease, they took ownership of that property. So their contractor is Walbridge, and they've already had some meetings with the Tdot people in Region 4 as far as where the gates will be for the different county roads. Some of those are being vacated. So they're going through their whole, Walbridge and Ford are going through their whole logistics plan right now about how they're going to access that point and coordinating those points with Tdot in the region. But it is all their responsibility
Okay.
security, traffic, everything. That's up to them. And we're also working with the Haywood County Road Superintendent also in
Okay.
those meetings.
Okay, I'm gonna jump to Chair Lady Hazelwood. I see she's on the list. I'm gonna let her, and unfortunately, I have a plethora of questions, but Chair Lady Hazelwood.
Thank you. Well, one of the questions that comes to mind based on your response just now to Chairman Williams, how much of the megasite property is actually under lease to Ford?
3,180 of the 4,100 acres.
Okay, and I think there was mentioning, Commissioner Roth mentioned there's someone else looking at a portion of that that's in the other acreage, I suppose.
Yes, ma'am.
On the, just tell a matter of curiosity, but on the site plan that you showed us, we had the CSX incoming, you had the, from the left, you had the, all the supply, the process, I guess, and then the product leaving on the railway. There was a large white building you mentioned, an incredible amount of space. And what did you say was in there? I'm sorry, I missed that.
That's the battery plant,
Okay,
SK.
so that is the whole battery plant.
Yes, ma'am.
And then there would, at some point, the plan would be to duplicate this, it would be
That's
twice
my understanding. Yes, ma'am.
this much. You mentioned that the site work is being done by a Knoxville company. Of the work that you know about that is either currently under contract or is being contracted, how much of the work is being done by Tennessee companies? How much is being done by Tennessee workers?
So all I know to tell you is Walbridge is the general contractor, the CM for the whole project. And all they have awarded so far, my understanding, is to Phillips and Jordan for the site work. So as far as any other subs that they've got on board yet or working with, I'm not privy to that. I don't think they're at that point yet.
And again, this might not be a fair question for you, but the of those contractors and potential contractors, what kind of requirements are there for union membership or not?
I think, and I don't know this for sure, but I think there's something as far as, I don't know if they have to be union or not, but I think there's some sort of a labor agreement or a maintenance agreement that they're supposed to sign. But again, the authority doesn't have any bearing on that. That's up to Ford and Walbridge on how they're handling the contracting on that. But that's my understanding.
All right, and who could, other than Ford, Commissioner Ransom, do you have?
I was just going to say, I do have information on how Walbridge and Ford and the contractors out there are working with diverse business enterprises, should you want any of that information.
Certainly.
Okay, so to date, our Go DBE office, which is the governor's office on diverse business enterprises, we've had 4 outreach meetings on behalf of Garney Construction. 2 meetings were held in Stanton. There were about 70 in attendance there. 1 was held in Memphis, and then 1 was held in Brownsville. In total, there were 125 people in attendance, either virtually or in person. GoDBE has also provided Ford Motor Company, as well as the other contractors out there, a list of all of our diversity business enterprises who are out there, and also the organizations in West Tennessee who help promote those diverse business enterprises. Just keeping in mind, diverse business enterprises are small businesses owned by Tennesseans, of course, and diverse business enterprises, minority, women-owned, veteran-owned as well. But they are aware of all of the opportunities out there. Walbridge Construction and Ford had advertised for a meeting in January in Memphis. The outreach consisted of 2 sessions with a maximum capacity of each session of 250, and they both maxed out. And GoDBE also worked with Walbridge for 2 more outreach meetings I think it was the week before last, or may have been last week, and both of those went extremely well, and those were in Jackson, Tennessee. So they've been very active. Brassfield Gorey, we've met with them, and they certainly intend to host openings and meetings for DBE businesses as well. Garney Construction, which is the first contractor out there, has just reported that they've actually received 28 bids and proposals from diverse businesses, and then 7 awards have already been made to diverse businesses, so that was good. Of those 7, 2 are African-American businesses. 12 diverse businesses have also been waitlisted, and all that means is Garney does intend to use them on an as-needed basis, but they just don't know exactly when they're going to call on them. So those efforts have gone very well, and those are all Tennessee businesses.
Thank you. I think that's one of the things that I think this committee and this legislative body is going to be interested in as we move forward, because our goal with these incentives are to provide jobs for Tennesseans. So, and I understand that Ford will be controlling, who has access to the work site, and they have the ultimate decision making. But again, it's a vital interest, I think, to all of us to make sure that Tennessee taxpayer dollars are going to help Tennesseans. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chair-Lady Hazelwood. Follow up on a couple of the projects. We didn't really talk about CSX, even though you mentioned about a dual rail system. Looks like a spur off the main line to the plant. The question there is, we didn't see a line item for that. Is that budgetary cost solely borne by CSX to extend for the work?
CSX is dealing with Ford on that. So
Okay.
that's between CSX and Ford.
So our investment as it relates to incentive monies didn't include anything for rail.
The only incentive money they have is the capital grant for them to spend however Ford wants to spend.
So
that
they
money.
could spend all the $500 million on rail if they wanted to, but it really was just up to them.
It'll be a reimbursable grant for their costs, so they can appropriate that where they want to.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
For our chief engineer and Tdot folks, is it typical for us to do the engineering for a project like this and then have it bid out, or do we normally outsource that? I kind of thought I heard that we were outsourcing the design, or we were doing the design internally, or is that only for budgetary purposes?
So I think to answer your question, so about half of the work we do of the work that goes to contract is designed by the consultant industry. Typically for a large project like this, on a very accelerated time frame, the design of that would be consulted out to the consultant industry. HDR is a national firm that has a lot of its roots here in Tennessee, so they have Tennessee staff working on the project. As far as the construction phase of the project, we anticipate using probably 2 different procurement methods. The really tight time frame on getting the new interchange and the road into the mega site, we see using our construction manager, general contractor procurement methodology. That is a tool the General Assembly put in law several years ago for us. But we also believe that our traditional design bid build procurement that we've been using for 50 years will be used on components of the project as well.
Okay. Well, you mentioned earlier that you had to make revise from a divided 2-lane road through the mega site to a 5-lane road with a turning lane. Whenever we make these changes, obviously we've added 20% paving that we didn't have before. Paving is pretty expensive. Based upon the $200 million we set aside, are you concerned at all about having to come back after design and bidding using either method, that $200 million is going to suffice as it relates to these improvements?
Again, Paul Deggs, certainly cost is a significant factor in how we look at things. There have been changes in how Ford is approaching getting their raw materials in, employees in and such, that we've been able to do some reconfiguring of the interchange at exit 39 that reduces the scale of the interchange. Also, where we're going through the regional mega site, going from a divided highway to a 5-lane cross section is a narrower cross section. And so we believe we are still within the targeted funds for the project right now. But until we start getting pricing, I mean, there's outside influences with, inflationary trends are impacting us as well. But right now, we believe we're still within the dollars appropriated through the recent legislation.
On the northwest corner of the property, it looks like an interchange into the business park or something that's going on there. That's not a test area. It just looks like north of exit 42, I believe it is. Is that I didn't know if that was another interchange. If you looked on the drawing,
So
It-
in the, go ahead and pull that drawing back up. So I believe what you're referring to is where the blue and the red come together.
Yes.
There's an interchange there. That is just an interchange. One of the things that the department was doing in working with the developers, we're trying to have a more or less free flow situation to where trucks entering and exiting the plant via the connector road and Highway 194 would not have to go through traffic signals and things of that nature. So we've put grade separated interchanges in where State Route 194 is going to extend north up to State Route 1.
okay. Makes a little more sense. I did notice, Mr. Bright, on the site plan that I didn't see a test track. Is that not something you need, or it was one there and I just couldn't see it because it was too small?
I hadn't heard of a test track. No, sir.
Okay. So they don't have to test them. I guess they come off the line perfect. Unless
They're going to be using I-40, I don't know.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. One of the things you also mentioned that I think is really important as it relates to higher ed, K-12, I had an opportunity as a younger man to take a trip to Germany to see how automobiles are manufactured there. They have at the Porsche facility there, they have an unbelievable integrated program for apprenticeships with K-12. I know we're talking about a TCAT, but it was a huge sense of pride in Stuttgart if your family member worked at the Porsche facility. My question is there a collaboration between K-12 through an apprenticeship program, or are these, we love to use this word, silos of each individual one, or is there a place where you think that meets together in the plant?
I'm not sure about the silo, but as far as on our side, working with Ford and with the Ford Fund and Ford Talent and what they're trying to do and what their curriculum needs are. And when I said when on our coordinating task force, we have higher education, we have Department of Education, we have DHS, and we have Labor and Workforce Development. All those folks are all working together. I mean, Department of Education is trying to figure out from 8th grade to 12th grade, what kind of curriculum, what kind of STEM programs can we get into these schools to get these 8th graders to start thinking about their career opportunity that can be at Ford, and whether they move into TCAT and train there and then on site there. But everybody's working in conjunction with Ford to try and take a bigger picture than just the TCAT. So
Okay.
that is going on. And I don't see on our side, and I don't think it's happening on their side. We're not seeing the silos.
Okay. Thank you. Representative Shaw, you had a question, and I'll come back to my platform.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. First of all, just a quick comment. I know a lot of people involved, and thank all of you, but I personally want to thank Mr. Bright. He's done an excellent job in the community so far down there in terms of communicating with the community and keeping the community involved and knowing what's going on. I don't live in that area, but I'm close to it. I go to church in that area, and I don't hear anything but good things about what you've done. And I just want to commit it, and you've done an excellent job. Appreciate it very much. Did want to ask, of course, we get all kind of questions, but I got a question the other day in terms of producing batteries. Are there any health issues around, and I don't know who might answer this, any health issues we should be concerned about when it comes to producing batteries in a plant in that area?
I don't think so. I mean, we're still working through our zoning operation and trying to understand what risk could be out there. But as I talked about that pre-treatment program, Ford has got to handle any waste that they're sending to the water treatment plant that's owned and operated by General Services. So we're taking care of anything that's coming downstream. And once it leaves the treatment plant, they're either going to reuse that at Ford or they're going to send it to the river. And at that point, it's clean. So I don't see any risk in what the wastewater treatment that we're operating out there. As far as how they're handling the materials, I've heard that they may have some sort of recycling plant on this project for the battery side of it. And what all that means from what you're asking, Representative Shaw, I just don't know yet. But it's a question that we're talking about with
Okay.
Ford and the design team.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman.
Thank you. If any other members have questions, I've got a few more, and then I'll let y'all go. I'm just kidding. When you talked about the negotiation terms of the lease, who's the entity that signs the lease on behalf? Is it Ford Motor Company?
Yes, sir.
Okay. As it relates to the, there's a little bit of confusion I had about the wastewater treatment plant. When we originally gave the proposal, similar question to Tdot, we went from 2.7 million gallons to 5.1 million gallons as it relates to the wastewater treatment plant. Any additional costs associated with that redesign and growth? Are we okay as it relates to cost?
Yes, there was redesign. We started out at 3.1 or 3.2, I think, and then it grew to 4.6, and then we ended at 5.1. There was additional cost with redesign, but I have absolutely no concerns at this point about our budget. We made sure that we built plenty of contingency in our budget numbers just to make sure we could accommodate any potential design changes and any contingency for construction costs. So I feel confident that we're going to be fine within our budget.
Thank you. I appreciate the fact that your department has done a fantastic job of making sure that we have adequate numbers, and particularly during your testimony about how the cost of construction has gone up 43% in 2 years. It's very hard to predict. So I appreciate that. One last question. It's kind of an interesting question for me. If the state has invested this, I wrote it down, the commissioner, a $500 million bucket of gold, I think it's what he called it. That $500 million bucket of gold, there has been some discussion about who's in charge of the construction project. We've heard of 7 different entities. I guess it relates to either design or construction for battery plant or whoever. As it relates to the actual facility improvements that are being paid for by our new tenant, are you concerned at all in a right-to-work state that we currently live in, who's trying to enshrine in our Constitution about rights to work? I've heard discussions from folks up in that area that you submit a proposal to an entity which is represented by a union, and they submit the proposal back to you and ask you to increase the labor rates by a certain dollar amount, so that at the end of the day, the union is preserved and it's open PO through the labor union there. I guess some of the concerns that others may have is that this $500 million is being siphoned through a union in a labor in a right to work state. Can any of you all comment? Has that been your experience whatsoever with any of these process where the big challenge is that we have all kinds of different OEM manufacturers with completely different relationships across the state? Some at times are fantastic, and sometimes we scratch our head thinking, what's going on? Could any of y'all speak to that? Have you seen that labor rates change as it relates to construction? When I talked to the administration early on about this process, it was always said, yes, the union is going to be a huge component and partner as it relates to the manufacturing of the facilities. I think this manufacturing of the vehicles. But I was surprised to hear that the actual construction may actually be that way. Can any of you all speak to that or ease some of my colleagues' concerns?
Well, I can say from my perspective, in Department of General Services, as I said, Clay and I have weekly meetings with their contractor, their construction manager, Walbridge. I've never heard any of that. I've never heard any of that mentioned in any of those meetings, and I have no other knowledge of that. I've not heard anything else like that regarding labor rates or anything. We have certainly not experienced that in our construction work that we're doing on the infrastructure. But in addition, as I said, I've never heard any comments like that about union whatsoever or any prevailing wages. Have you heard anything,
I have
Clay?
not.
Yeah.
Again, Paul Deggs, just to reiterate, the contracts that we let are through the bid processes we do for really every other project in the state.
Mhm.
So there should be no impact of that directly on anything that the department has.
Are any of those rates, any federal Davis-Bacon wages or anything required for any of these contracts, either state or
Absolutely
local?
not.
Okay. All right. Quick question, because I saw she came to attend today, and we'd love to hear from Ms. Carlton about what's going on in local communities. One of the biggest and most important components of all these billions of dollars we set aside is a mere small pot of money as it relates to the locals. And I think it shouldn't be lost on us how important this is, not just for all the contracts that we've heard about today, but how Johnny Shaw's cousins will be impacted that live a couple counties over. So could you give us an update on what's going on with our local communities and how they're faring as it relates to such a large investment in their community?
Sure. One of the, there we go. I think one of the first things that we started hearing after the announcement was when the mayor started calling and saying, we saw the press release, but now we don't know what's going on. So we have started what we're calling Louisville City Community Impact Meetings. We're going to do 2 a month, one virtually and one in person. We have our first in-person one this week. We've had about 120 people on the virtual meetings. They're targeted to local government leaders, but we've had lots of people sign up for our email list about those. We've had Tdot on, their team just gave an overview of what's going on the site with those road improvements that you heard today. And then we had their long-range transportation planners say, okay, Lauderdale County, if your long-range transportation plan has changed based on Blue Oval City, here's what you do to kind of redo your long-range transportation plan. We had TDEC on that did kind of the same thing. If you're thinking about doing a regional wastewater treatment plant, here's what you need to be doing right now. We have a meeting coming up this week. Some folks from Tupelo are going to come and talk about how Toyota impacted Tupelo. So we've had just we're going to have a diverse group of speakers just to let everybody get on the same page and know what's going on around the site and how it may impact their community. And then, as you mentioned, we have the $5 million planning grant. That RFP will go out in the next 2 weeks. We're going to get a contractor on board, and they are going to help the communities impacted by the Blue Oval City with things like water and sewer planning, housing, their impacts to their school system, population projections, land use planning, that kind of stuff. So that will be available to the communities in May.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that update. Representative Shaw, your name was called.
Well, you called my name, Mr. Chairman, so I thought I should respond. And this is serious. Now, I can tell you what the community is saying about that question you asked. That was a contractor who didn't get a contract, and that contractor put that information out about the union. So I think that's where it all came from. And that's what the community will tell you, that we just had one contractor who wanted to get involved, didn't get involved for whatever reason, and put out bad information.
Thank you for your divining rod, Representative. I think it was important for us to get on the record to what the discussion is so that things don't go off the rail, if you will. Finally, Mr. Bright, you communicated about the lease terms and that the ground lease payments would be going back. Who is the beneficiary of the ground lease or the lease payments over
The
that?
pilot program,
Yes.
that's up to the authority. It's my understanding per the legislation, that's up to the authority board to make
Mhm.
those decisions.
Okay, so if they wanted to supplant the $5 million to local communities with proceeds from the lease, they could do that?
That's my understanding.
Commissioner?
So say that again.
Well, in March 11th of this year, we entered into a lease
Right.
on 3,600 acres from Ford Motor Company. That lease, that ground lease, I'm assuming is not $1. It is a set fee over that 30-year period. My question is, who is the recipient of those proceeds from the ground lease? If I were the landlord, it'd be me. The question is the landlord the Megasite Authority? Is it the local community? Is it the state of Tennessee?
Well, it is, as CEO Bright stated, it is that the Megasite Authority will make those decisions. There's 2 counties there that are very closely aligned, and so it will be up to the Megasite Authority to make that decision. In a local government scenario, which I'm more familiar with, of course, and the state's never done this kind of project before, it would be the development or the county within which the improvements were constructed. So it will be up to the Megasite Authority to make those decisions.
Okay. Well, I don't have any other questions from. Okay, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that means Haywood County could be one of the recipients of some of that lease money.
So Representative Shaw, yes, sir. Those decisions, that discussion has not occurred within the authority to date, but it's something that will come in the future. And as Commissioner Ross said, it's a couple of years out before that pilot program, pilot in lieu of taxes, starts coming out.
That 269
Yes, sir.
plus million
Yes, sir.
over the next 30 years, it could go to any of the local governments in that area based upon what the Megasite Authority Board decided
That's the intent. Yes, sir.
to do.
Now,
Okay.
how that gets distributed from a percentage point of view will be up to the board.
Well, I'm sure our local folks would be glad to hear that, hear that news. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah.
Not
Yes,
too
sir.
fast, Representative. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people with their hand out for that $1. That just means the Megasite Authority has a little bit more purview than maybe some had thought. I would argue that the state's $1.5 billion investment might return a little bit of that back to the state. But I appreciate all of you being here today. I know you're extremely busy, and it was a really great day to be in a car driving around somewhere, I'm told. But I haven't been outside, so I wouldn't know that. But thank you guys for coming. Ms. Carlton, please send your best to Commissioner for his attendance as well. You guys have a blessed day. The members and so we're back in session. The members have any further questions, comments? Seeing none, move to adjourn.